History often remembers the great empires, Rome, Egypt, Persia, but for every famous empire, countless smaller civilizations rose, thrived, and left their unique marks on human history. From the vast steppes of Eurasia to the cliffside fortresses of the Andes, today we're uncovering 10 ancient civilizations you may not have heard of, each with secrets and wonders that rival the greatest empires. The Sarmatians, warrior nomads of the steppes. Picture the vast, windswept Eurasian steppes stretching as far as the eye can see. It was here, in these harsh and unyielding landscapes, that the Sarmatians emerged, an ancient, fierce, and resilient nomadic people whose legacy would echo down through history. Known as fearsome warriors and masters of horseback combat, the Sarmatians rivaled their famous neighbors, the Scythians, and left a cultural imprint that would influence Slavic and European societies. The Sarmatians are believed to have originated from the Central Asian steppes, with roots tracing back to the Indo-Iranian tribal groups that roamed this region thousands of years ago. Related linguistically and culturally to the ancient Persians and Medes, the Sarmatians spoke an Iranian language and shared a nomadic, warrior-oriented culture that emphasized strength, endurance, and independence. This ancestry places them within the larger family of Iranian peoples, alongside groups like the Alans, Ossetians, and the more widely known Scythians, their northern neighbors. By the 5th century BCE, the Sarmatians had spread from Central Asia into the vast expanse of territory between the Ural Mountains and the lower Danube River, covering parts of present-day Russia, Ukraine, and Eastern Europe. Unlike their Scythian cousins, who had established semi-permanent settlements, the Sarmatians were more fiercely nomadic, constantly on the move and relying heavily on their skill with horses to navigate the challenging terrain. Their way of life revolved around herding and warfare, and their society was structured around warrior clans, each led by a chieftain or tribal leader who maintained authority through battle prowess and leadership skills. The Sarmatians had a highly stratified social structure, with a warrior elite at the top. Their society was unique in that it allowed and even celebrated women who took up arms. Archaeological discoveries of Sarmatian graves in southern Russia have revealed the remains of women buried with weapons and armor, evidence of a culture that respected female warriors. This aspect of Sarmatian life may have inspired the Greek legends of the Amazons, the fierce warrior women who stood shoulder to shoulder with men on the battlefield. Though primarily a warrior culture, the Sarmatians had a spiritual and artistic side that is evident from artifacts found in burial mounds scattered across the steppes. They adorned their armor, clothing, and horses with intricate patterns and symbols, often depicting animals like horses, eagles, and wolves, which were likely significant in their spiritual beliefs. Horses, in particular, were revered in Sarmatian society and were central to their rituals, often buried alongside warriors to accompany them into the afterlife. The Sarmatians were constantly at odds with neighboring tribes and empires. Their primary rivals were the Scythians, who dominated the northern Black Sea region. The two cultures shared similarities, but often clashed over territory. In the later centuries, the Sarmatians came into conflict with the Roman Empire, engaging in skirmishes along Rome's eastern frontiers. The Romans, recognizing their skill in warfare, eventually recruited Sarmatian warriors as auxiliary troops. These Sarmatian mercenaries played a significant role in the Roman military, particularly in Britain, where legends suggest they may have influenced the early tales of knights and chivalry. By the 4th century CE, the Sarmatian way of life began to fade, primarily due to pressure from invading tribes like the Huns and Goths. Many Sarmatians were assimilated into these new cultures or dispersed across Europe. Over time, the Sarmatian language and customs gradually disappeared, leaving only traces in the archaeological record. Some historians speculate that remnants of the Sarmatian people merged with early Slavic populations, contributing to the genetic and cultural mosaic of Eastern Europe. The Sarmatian legacy can still be seen today, especially in Eastern Europe, where traces of their influence persist in the folklore, traditions, and even some of the martial practices of the region. Their descendants are thought to include the Ossetians, an ethnic group living in the Caucasus who speak an Iranian language closely related to that of the ancient Sarmatians. Additionally, the Sarmatians left an enduring mark on the concept of warrior societies, influencing both medieval chivalric ideals and the imagery of the mounted knight. Though largely forgotten, the fierce spirit of the Sarmatians lives on, embodied in the cultural heritage of the people who now inhabit the lands they once roamed. The Elamites, ancient neighbors of Mesopotamia. To the south of Mesopotamia, where present-day Iran stretches along the Zagros Mountains, the Elamites established one of the earliest known civilizations. Their origins are ancient, their culture deeply entwined with those of their Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian neighbors, yet their identity remains uniquely Elamite. Although often overshadowed by their more famous neighbors, the Elamites were highly influential in the ancient world. The Elamites likely emerged from the fusion of local Neolithic cultures around 3200 BCE. Their origins are complex, with evidence suggesting links to the broader Proto-Elamite civilization, a culture that predated the rise of the Elamites and may have laid the groundwork for their development. The Elamite language was a language isolate, meaning it was not directly related to any neighboring languages, though it may have shared ancient ties with the Dravidian languages of southern India. Centered in the fertile plains near the Zagros Mountains and the lowlands of what is now southwestern Iran, the Elamites were ideally situated for agriculture and trade. Their capital, Susa, became a significant center of commerce, political power, and cultural development. The Elamites lived in fortified cities and practiced advanced forms of irrigation to support their agricultural lifestyle. This environment fostered a sophisticated society with a strong sense of identity, despite the constant pressure from larger Mesopotamian empires. The Elamites had a unique social structure, with a strong emphasis on royal authority and family dynasties. Kingship was often passed down through maternal lines, an unusual practice that set them apart from the patrilineal inheritance common in neighboring societies. Elamite religion centered on a pantheon of gods, and their art and architecture often depicted divine figures, symbols of fertility, and scenes of worship. The Elamites are renowned for their intricate art and monumental architecture, particularly the temples and statues found at Susa. Their artisans produced fine pottery, jewelry, and statues, which displayed a blend of local and Mesopotamian styles. Religious ceremonies played a central role in Elamite society, with grand temples dedicated to their gods. One of their most famous artifacts is the bronze statue of Queen Napier-Asu, a testament to the skill of Elamite craftsmen and the reverence held for royalty. The Elamites were frequently in conflict with neighboring Mesopotamian powers like the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. They often allied with or fought against these empires depending on the political landscape of the time. Despite the conflicts, cultural exchange was constant, and the Elamites adopted various Mesopotamian innovations, including aspects of writing, though they maintained a distinct language and script. Over time, the Elamites faced repeated invasions from Mesopotamian empires, which weakened their political structure. The Assyrian Empire delivered a devastating blow to Elam in the 7th century BCE, sacking Susa and significantly diminishing Elamite power. Finally, The rise of the Persian Achaemenid Empire in the 6th century BCE absorbed Elam into its expanding territory. Although their culture faded, their influence persisted within the Persian Empire. Today, the Elamite legacy survives mainly through archaeology, with discoveries at sites like Susa providing a glimpse into their society. Elements of their art and architectural styles influenced the Achaemenid Persians, and their matrilineal dynastic traditions are unique in the region's history. Though their language and culture have largely disappeared, the Elamites represent an essential chapter in the story of ancient Iran, leaving an indelible mark on the civilizations that followed. The Etruscans, architects of early Italy. Before Rome's rise to power, the Etruscans dominated the Italian peninsula, building a sophisticated and culturally rich society that influenced nearly every aspect of Roman life. From their religion to their engineering, the Etruscans laid the groundwork for what would become the Roman Empire, and yet much about them remains shrouded in mystery. The origins of the Etruscans are a subject of debate among historians. Some believe they were native to Italy, evolving from local Villanovan cultures, while others suggest they may have migrated from Anatolia, given linguistic and cultural similarities. Regardless, by the 8th century BCE, they had established a distinct civilization across the region we now know as Tuscany. Etruria, the homeland of the Etruscans, stretched across central Italy, encompassing modern-day Tuscany, Lazio, and parts of Umbria. The Etruscans were an agrarian people who developed advanced farming techniques and built thriving city-states. Unlike the later Roman Republic, Etruscan cities were autonomous, each ruled by a king or noble class, but united by cultural and religious traditions. Etruscan society was hierarchical, with a ruling aristocracy overseeing a population that included artisans, farmers, and slaves. Religion played a central role, with a pantheon of gods and complex rituals that influenced Roman religious practices. The Etruscans are known for their elaborate burial practices, with tombs decorated in intricate frescoes that offer glimpses into their daily life and beliefs about the afterlife. The Etruscans were master artisans, particularly skilled in metalworking and pottery. Their sculptures, frescoes, and decorative arts are distinguished by their detail and symbolic imagery, often depicting scenes of banquets, religious ceremonies, and mythological events. They had a unique form of divination known as haruspicy, which involved interpreting the entrails of animals to predict the future, a practice the Romans would later adopt. The Etruscans were neighbors to the early Romans, and the two cultures interacted through trade, alliances, and eventually warfare. The Etruscans also had strong connections with the Greeks, who influenced their art, architecture, and writing. Etruscan military prowess helped them maintain dominance in central Italy until Rome's expansion in the 4th century BCE. The rise of Rome ultimately led to the Etruscans' decline. After a series of wars, the Romans absorbed Etruscan cities, assimilating their culture but diminishing their political independence. By the end of the 3rd century BCE, the Etruscan language was largely forgotten, and much of their cultural identity had been Romanized. The Etruscans left an indelible mark on Roman civilization, from their religious practices to their engineering feats, like aqueducts and arches. Many aspects of what we consider Roman culture, such as gladiatorial games, augury, and public forums, originated with the Etruscans. In modern Italy, especially in Tuscany, remnants of Etruscan art and architecture continue to be unearthed, preserving the legacy of this foundational civilization. The Kushites, pharaohs of Nubia. In the deserts of Nubia, south of ancient Egypt, the Kushite kingdom rose to prominence as a powerful African civilization. Known for their distinctive pyramids, advanced iron working, and influence over Egypt itself, the Kushites built a culture that thrived for centuries and left a mark on African and Mediterranean history. The origins of the Kushites can be traced back to early Nubian cultures along the Nile, where they developed an advanced society centered around the city of Kerma by 2400 BCE. Unlike their Egyptian neighbors, the Kushites were culturally distinct, with unique religious practices, art, and a matrilineal inheritance structure in some dynasties. Their language and customs indicate a blend of indigenous African influences, forming a separate identity from the Egyptians while sharing a deep connection with the Nile River. The Kingdom of Kush covered the region south of Egypt, extending from the first cataract of the Nile in what is now southern Egypt to modern-day Sudan. This strategic location enabled them to control vital trade routes connecting Africa to the Mediterranean and the Middle East. The Kushites adapted to their arid environment, building extensive irrigation systems to support agriculture, which became the backbone of their economy alongside trade in gold, ivory, and exotic animals. Kushite society was hierarchical, with a king, often called the King of Kush, at its apex. Religion played a central role, with a pantheon of gods that included deities similar to Egyptian gods, such as Amun, whom they worshipped as a central figure. The capital city of Meroe, established around 800 BCE, became a significant religious and cultural center, renowned for its unique architecture, iron production, and Nubian-style pyramids. The Kushites expressed their cultural identity through art, architecture, and religious ceremonies. They built pyramids at Meroe and Napata, albeit smaller and steeper than those of Egypt, and decorated them with intricate carvings. Kushite art often depicted their gods, queens, and warriors in distinctive African styles, combining Egyptian influence with their own cultural symbolism. They also engaged in elaborate religious ceremonies, many of which involved offerings to Amun and other deities. The Kushites had a complex relationship with Egypt, alternating between peaceful trade and conquest. In the 8th century BCE, Kushite rulers established Egypt's 25th dynasty, uniting the two lands under what is often called the Kushite Empire. During this period, Kushite pharaohs ruled as Egyptian kings, bringing their cultural influence to Egypt's art, religion, and architecture. However, Assyrian invasions eventually forced them to retreat to their Nubian heartland. By the 4th century CE, the Kushite kingdom had declined due to a combination of factors, including the rise of the Axumite Empire to the east, shifts in trade routes, and over-reliance on natural resources. Meroe's iron production exhausted local wood supplies, weakening the kingdom's economic foundation. Although the kingdom eventually faded, the legacy of the Kushites endures in the archaeological remains of their cities and monuments. Modern Sudan and southern Egypt are home to the remnants of Kushite civilization, and the Nubian people living in this region are considered descendants of the ancient Kushites. The legacy of the Kushites endures in their distinct cultural contributions, including the iconic Nubian pyramids, which continue to captivate archaeologists and historians. Additionally, the legacy of the 25th dynasty left an enduring African influence on Egyptian history and established a powerful symbol of African leadership in the ancient world. The Moche, artisans of ancient Peru. In the coastal deserts of northern Peru, the Moche civilization created one of the most advanced societies in pre-Columbian South America, known for their sophisticated art, elaborate ceramics, and unique religious practices. The Mochi left behind a legacy of creativity and engineering that rivals any in the ancient world. The Moche civilization emerged around the 1st century CE along the arid coastline of northern Peru. Their ancestry likely stems from earlier Andean cultures, including the Chavin and Kupiznik, whose influence on art and religion laid the groundwork for Moche society. The Moche developed an intricate system of governance, ceremonial practices, and specialized craft that set them apart from other cultures in the Andes. The Moche inhabited the river valleys and coastal plains of northern Peru, between the modern cities of Piura and Trujillo. Their arid environment posed significant challenges, which they overcame by constructing complex irrigation systems to channel water from the Andean rivers. This agricultural innovation allowed the Moche to cultivate maize, beans, and squash, sustaining a growing population and supporting specialized artisans, warriors, and religious leaders. Moche society was hierarchical, with a ruling elite composed of warriors and priests who oversaw large-scale construction projects and ceremonial centers. Religion was central to Moche life, with rituals involving elaborate sacrificial ceremonies, as seen in their murals and artifacts. Leadership was likely theocratic, as the Moche leaders were regarded as intermediaries between the gods and the people, a belief reflected in the ornate tombs of Moche rulers. The Moche are renowned for their detailed pottery and metalwork, which depicted scenes of daily life, warfare, and religious ceremonies. Moche pottery, often painted in red and white, is particularly notable for its realistic depictions of animals, plants, and human figures, offering invaluable insight into their society. The Huaca de la Luna, Temple of the Moon, and the Huaca del Sol, Temple of the Sun, massive adobe structures adorned with murals, serve as monumental expressions of Moche spirituality. While primarily self-contained, the Moche interacted with nearby cultures through trade and warfare, securing resources like obsidian, feathers, and rare stones from the Amazon. However, as their society grew, evidence suggests internal conflicts may have arisen over resources and political power, contributing to instability. The Moche civilization began to decline around the 8th century CE, possibly due to a combination of environmental factors and internal strife. Geological evidence indicates that a series of catastrophic El Niño events brought prolonged droughts and severe flooding, which may have devastated Moche agriculture and undermined their societal stability. Additionally, evidence of fortified walls suggests increased warfare in their final years, likely fueled by competition for dwindling resources. The Moche left an enduring legacy in Peruvian culture, with their artistry and engineering achievements continuing to inspire Andean societies. Today, Moche artifacts are celebrated as some of the finest examples of ancient craftsmanship, and ongoing archaeological discoveries continue to reveal the complexity of their society. Many descendants of the Moche's Andean and coastal populations live in Peru, carrying forward aspects of their cultural heritage, including pottery styles and agricultural techniques. The Axumites, traders of the Red Sea. On the Ethiopian and Eritrean highlands overlooking the Red Sea, the kingdom of Axum flourished as a dominant trading empire, connecting Africa with the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Known for its monumental stelae, distinctive script, and connections to the Ark of the Covenant legend, Axum remains one of Africa's most enduring ancient kingdoms. The Axumites emerged as a powerful civilization around the 1st century CE, likely descended from the earlier Sabaean culture of southern Arabia and indigenous African groups. This fusion of influences created a distinct culture, blending African and Semitic elements that set Axum apart. Their linguistic heritage evolved into the Ge'ez script, one of the oldest alphabets still used in the liturgical practices of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Axum's capital was located in the Ethiopian highlands near the Red Sea, giving the kingdom control over trade routes between the African interior, the Middle East, and India. The Axumites developed advanced agricultural techniques, including terrace farming, to sustain their mountainous communities. Trade and commerce were central to Axumite life, and the port city of Adulis on the Red Sea coast facilitated commerce with the Roman Empire, Persia, and India. Axumite society was hierarchical, ruled by a king who held both political and religious authority. The Axumites worshipped a blend of indigenous gods and later converted to Christianity in the 4th century CE under King Ezana, becoming one of the first kingdoms to adopt Christianity as a state religion. The kingdom's social structure supported a thriving urban culture with a significant artisan and merchant class involved in producing and trading luxury goods. Axumite art is best known for its towering stelae, massive stone monuments that served as burial markers for nobility. These stelae, some over 20 meters tall, are intricately carved and reflect a sophisticated level of engineering and artistic skill. Additionally, Axumite coins, one of the few ancient African currencies, featured inscriptions and symbols that reveal the kingdom's shift from polytheism to Christianity. The Axumites maintained strong trade relations with the Roman Empire, Persia, and the Indian subcontinent, exchanging goods like ivory, gold, and spices. Their strategic location and military prowess enabled them to dominate the Red Sea, making them rivals to the neighboring Himyarite kingdom in Arabia. By the 7th century CE, Axum faced a decline due to the rise of Islam, which shifted trade routes away from the Red Sea. Deforestation, soil erosion, and overuse of land may have further weakened the kingdom's agricultural base. By the 8th century, Axum's influence had waned, and its capital moved further inland, marking the end of its golden age. Axum's legacy endures in modern Ethiopia, where the Ge'ez script and Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity remain central to cultural identity. The stelae of Axum, the ruins of ancient Adulis, and the legends surrounding the Ark of the Covenant continue to draw global interest, preserving the memory of this African kingdom. The Harappans, builders of urban marvels. In the fertile river plains of South Asia, one of the world's first urban civilizations emerged. Known today as the Indus Valley Civilization or Harappan civilization, these people created sophisticated cities and a society so advanced that it still puzzles historians. From their undeciphered script to their meticulous city planning, the Indus Valley Civilization remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Arising around 3300 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization likely evolved from local Neolithic communities along the Indus River and its tributaries in what is now Pakistan and northwestern India. Genetic evidence suggests a blending of indigenous hunter-gatherer groups with ancient Iranian agriculturalists, forming a unique population that built the foundations of Harappan society. The civilization's major cities, including Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and Dholavira, were located along the Indus River, which provided fertile soil for agriculture. The Indus Valley people practiced intensive farming, cultivating wheat, barley, and peas, while also domesticating cattle, sheep, and water buffalo. This region's geographical diversity, with its rivers, floodplains, and seasonal monsoons, shaped a resilient society well adapted to environmental changes. The Indus Valley society appears to have been highly organized and egalitarian. Unlike the rigid social structures of neighboring civilizations, there is little evidence of a ruling elite or monumental palaces, suggesting a decentralized governance model. Their sophisticated city planning, with grid-like street layouts, public baths, and drainage systems, indicates an advanced understanding of urban planning and community hygiene. Harappan art includes intricately carved seals, pottery, and sculptures, often depicting animals such as bulls, elephants, and unicorn-like creatures. Many seals also feature symbols from their undeciphered script, hinting at possible religious or administrative functions. The civilization's spiritual beliefs are not well understood, but artifacts suggest they may have practiced fertility rituals and revered a mother goddess figure, as well as sacred animals like the bull. The Harappans engaged in extensive trade with Mesopotamian civilizations, exchanging goods like carnelian beads, copper, and ivory for silver, gold, and textiles. Harappan seals have been found in Mesopotamian archaeological sites, indicating strong trade connections. Although largely peaceful, evidence suggests the Harappans may have faced sporadic conflicts with neighboring communities. By 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization began to decline, possibly due to environmental factors like changes in river patterns, prolonged droughts, or resource depletion. The drying up of the Gagar-Hakra River, which may have been the ancient Sarasvati River, likely contributed to the abandonment of major urban centers. Additionally, climate shifts that disrupted monsoon patterns may have weakened their agricultural base. Although they dispersed, the Harappans left a lasting legacy in South Asia. Modern descendants of the Indus Valley people are likely found among various populations in Pakistan and northwest India, where remnants of Harappan culture persist. Many scholars believe elements of their culture, such as their architectural techniques and symbolic representations, influenced later Indian civilizations, including the Vedic culture that followed. Today, the mysteries of the Indus script and the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro continue to captivate the world. The Chachapoya, cloud people of the Andes. High in the Andean mountains of Peru, a mysterious people known as the Chachapoya, or cloud people, built fortress-like settlements among the clouds. Known for their cliffside tombs, strong physical stature, and resistance to the Incas, the Chachapoya left behind an intriguing legacy that defies the usual narrative of Andean civilizations. The Chachapoya people likely descended from early Andean populations who migrated into the dense cloud forests of northern Peru. Archaeological and genetic evidence suggests that they developed in isolation, separated from other Andean cultures by the rugged geography of the region. Over centuries, they adapted to the high-altitude environment and created a unique society deeply connected to the natural landscape. The Chachapoya lived in the remote Andean highlands of what is now the Amazonas region of Peru. Their settlements were often perched on mountain ridges or built into cliffs, earning them the nickname Cloud People. These high-altitude locations offered natural defense, while the Chachapoya cultivated potatoes, maize, and quinoa on terraced farms. Their lives were closely tied to the mountains, with religious beliefs that likely centered on sacred landscapes and spirits of the highlands. Chachapoya society was organized into local communities, each with a degree of autonomy, although alliances between settlements were common. They constructed fortified stone cities, such as Quaylap, a massive complex with stone walls and circular houses that served as a ceremonial and defensive center. Chachapoya culture placed a strong emphasis on ancestry, with many tombs built into cliffs and the deceased buried in sitting positions facing the mountains. The Chachapoya were skilled artisans, crafting elaborate pottery and weaving textiles adorned with intricate patterns. Their burial practices reveal a deep spiritual connection to the mountains, with mummified bodies placed in chulpas, tombs carved into rock faces, facing east toward the rising sun. They practiced a form of ancestor worship, likely believing that spirits of the dead continued to protect their descendants. Despite their isolation, the Chachapoya eventually came into contact with the Inca Empire. Known for their fierce independence, the Chachapoya resisted Inca expansion, engaging in a series of skirmishes throughout the 15th century. Ultimately, the Inca conquered the Chachapoya, integrating them into their empire. Even under Inca rule, however, the Chachapoya retained a degree of autonomy and continued to practice many of their traditions. Following the Inca conquest, the Chachapoya faced further challenges with the arrival of Spanish colonizers. European diseases devastated the population, and their society was gradually dismantled by Spanish rule. Although the Chachapoya people largely disappeared, some of their cultural practices endured in the remote Andes, while their impressive ruins remained as silent witnesses to their legacy. The Olmecs, Mesoamerica's mother culture. In the tropical lowlands along the Gulf of Mexico, the Olmec civilization emerged as Mesoamerica's first major culture, known as the mother culture for its profound influence on later civilizations like the Maya and Aztec. With colossal stone heads, complex religious practices, and a deep connection to their environment, the Olmecs laid the groundwork for the civilizations that followed. The origins of the Olmecs date back to around 1600 BCE in the fertile river valleys of the modern Mexican states of Veracruz and Tabasco. The Olmecs are believed to have descended from indigenous hunter-gatherer communities in the region, who gradually developed into settled agricultural societies. Their ancestry links them to later Mesoamerican cultures, but they also display unique traits that set them apart, especially in their religious practices and artistry. The Olmec heartland spanned the humid lowlands along the Gulf Coast, where rivers and rich alluvial soils provided an ideal environment for agriculture. They cultivated maize, beans, and squash, which allowed them to establish dense settlements. Major Olmec cities, such as San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes, became centers of religious and political power. The Olmecs developed sophisticated drainage systems to manage the tropical climate and protect their ceremonial centers from flooding. Olmec society was highly stratified, with an elite class of priests and rulers who oversaw religious ceremonies and political administration. The Olmecs are known for their distinct social hierarchy, where the elite likely claimed divine authority. This structure is evident in their monumental architecture, which includes pyramids, plazas, and the colossal heads that depict powerful rulers or deities. The ruling class played a key role in maintaining social order, organizing trade networks, and controlling the flow of goods like jade, obsidian, and precious metals. The Olmecs are celebrated for their artistry, especially their colossal stone heads, each weighing several tons, that are believed to represent rulers or warriors. These heads, along with other artifacts like jade masks and altars, exhibit a high degree of craftsmanship. The Olmecs practiced a complex religion involving shamanism and animal symbolism, with a pantheon of gods tied to natural elements like the jaguar, a central figure in their mythology. Rituals likely involved bloodletting and possibly early forms of human sacrifice, common practices that later Mesoamerican civilizations would adopt. The Olmecs were active traders, connecting with other early Mesoamerican societies through extensive trade networks that stretched across present-day Mexico and Central America. They traded goods such as jade, obsidian, and rubber, influencing distant communities culturally and economically. Their interaction with neighboring cultures helped spread Olmec religious and artistic ideas throughout the region, laying the groundwork for Mesoamerican civilization. By around 400 BCE, the Olmec civilization began to decline, likely due to environmental changes, political upheaval, or a combination of both. Archaeological evidence suggests that significant climate shifts and resource depletion may have made the region less suitable for large settlements. The abandonment of major Olmec sites like San Lorenzo and La Venta remains a mystery, but their legacy persisted as their influence spread to other Mesoamerican cultures. The Olmecs' impact on Mesoamerica is profound. Their art, religious beliefs, and early calendar systems influenced later civilizations like the Maya and Aztec, making the Olmecs the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Many modern-day indigenous groups in southern Mexico consider themselves descendants of the Olmecs, and the colossal heads and other artifacts are cherished symbols of Mexico's ancient heritage. The Olmecs' sophisticated society and innovative practices laid the foundation for Mesoamerican civilization, shaping the region's cultural identity for centuries. The Nabateans, masters of the desert. In the rugged deserts of the Arabian Peninsula, the Nabateans carved a thriving civilization into the rock and sand. Famous for their rock-cut city of Petra, the Nabateans developed advanced water management systems and controlled key trade routes, allowing them to flourish in an unforgiving environment. The Nabateans were likely of Arab origin, descended from nomadic tribes that roamed the deserts of Arabia. They emerged as a distinct society around the 4th century BCE, establishing their capital at Petra in present-day Jordan. Their ancestry links them to other ancient Semitic-speaking peoples, and they spoke an early form of Arabic. The Nabatean script, derived from the Aramaic alphabet, later influenced the development of Arabic script, creating a lasting linguistic legacy. The Nabateans settled in a region with limited water resources, but they turned this challenge into an advantage. Petra, their capital, was strategically located along major trade routes that connected the Arabian Peninsula with the Mediterranean, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. The Nabateans became expert traders, facilitating the exchange of spices, incense, textiles, and other luxury goods between East and West. Their skill in water conservation allowed them to sustain agriculture in the arid environment, cultivating crops such as wheat, olives, and dates, and creating a stable food supply for their growing population. Nabatean society was highly organized, with a strong mercantile class that controlled the wealth and trade networks of the kingdom. The Nabatean elites, likely a coalition of powerful families, played a central role in governance, but the society had a more fluid structure compared to neighboring monarchies. Religion was also a significant aspect of Nabatean life, with a pantheon of deities that included Dushara, the god of the mountains, and Al-Uzza, a goddess associated with fertility and protection. Temples and shrines carved into the cliffs of Petra reflect the spiritual importance of the natural landscape. The Nabateans are celebrated for their unique rock-cut architecture, which includes monumental tombs, temples, and structures carved directly into sandstone cliffs. Petra's most famous structure, the treasury, Al-Kazne, with its elaborate Greco-Roman facade, symbolizes the Nabateans' artistic ingenuity and cultural adaptability. The Nabateans embraced influences from Hellenistic, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian art, blending these styles to create a distinct architectural aesthetic. Religious rituals likely took place in Petra's temples and open-air altars, with offerings to their gods and ceremonies honoring the forces of nature. The Nabateans were influential players in regional trade, interacting with the Romans, Greeks, Egyptians, and other cultures along their trade routes. Their wealth and control of valuable trade networks eventually attracted Roman attention. In 106 CE, the Roman Empire annexed Nabatea, incorporating it into the province of Arabia Petraea. The Nabateans maintained a degree of autonomy under Roman rule, but over time, Roman culture and administration began to shape Nabatean society. Following annexation by Rome, the Nabateans gradually lost control over their trade routes as the Romans developed sea routes that bypassed Petra. Additionally, changing trade patterns and increased competition weakened Petra's economic base. By the 4th century CE, Petra was largely abandoned as a commercial hub, and the Nabatean culture faded. The eventual decline of the Roman Empire and shifting political landscapes in the region contributed to Petra's isolation, leaving it hidden in the desert for centuries. Today, the Nabateans are remembered as one of the most resilient and innovative ancient cultures, with Petra recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the new 7 wonders of the world. The Nabatean script, an ancestor of Arabic, is a vital part of the linguistic heritage of the Arab world. Modern Jordanians, particularly those from the Petra region, honor the Nabateans as their cultural ancestors, and Petra's rock-cut monuments remain a testament to the ingenuity of a people who mastered the harsh desert environment. These 10 lost civilizations, from the steppes of Eurasia to the mountains of the Andes, remind us that history is full of diverse cultures, each with its own unique contributions to humanity. Though many of these societies have faded, their influence endures in the languages, art, architecture, and traditions that shape our world today. If you enjoyed this journey into forgotten histories, don't forget to subscribe to History Crossroads, where we uncover the stories of the past to better understand our shared heritage. Join us as we continue exploring the mysteries of ancient civilizations.